Well, hello, folks. I'm Jeffrey Darty, the Christian Whistleblower, and in response to several requests, we've launched a new series, and this is going to be a verse-by-verse, word-by-word, line-by-line exposition of the Nag Hammadi scriptures. And once we get through the Nag Hammadi, which will take quite a while, we'll go into some of the other scriptures, but we're going to be going through the Nag Hammadi scriptures. Nag Hammadi scriptures. It's the revised and updated translations of sacred Gnostic texts, complete in one volume, edited by Marvin Meyer. Now, we do, of course, talk about the New Testament in the original chronological order. That's in our original teachings of Yeshua. We talk about the book of Revelation in its real, true form. And we also talk about Apostle Paul Antichrist. And I'm going to also be starting a new series that's going to be called the Diamond New Testament Commentary. And we're going to go through the Diamond New Testament and also the words of Paul, which aren't in the Diamond New Testament as they relate to the apostles' words. And we're going to break it down not only with the scriptures, but with my own commentary. But today we're starting with the Nag Hammadi scriptures. And the first book in my compilation here of the Nag Hammadi scriptures, the very first thing to talk about here is, believe it or not, as strangely as it may seem, it's a writing called the Prayer of the Apostle Paul, and it's written on the front flyleaf of the Nag Hammadi Codex 1. People think it was probably added later, but I think it's interesting to read. And you're talking about, Jeff, why would you read the prayer of the Apostle Paul when you've proven conclusively that Paul is a rat bastard and he has co-opted and hijacked the message of Yeshua and has used it to build a fear and guilt-based control matrix that is continuing to enslave us for now 2,000 years. Well, I include it because, number one, this is a talk about the Nag Hammadi scriptures, and it is in the Nag Hammadi scriptures. But interestingly enough, the Nag Hammadi scriptures paints a very unflattering portrait of Paul. It shows him as the great spouter of lies. It shows him as front and center in creating what was a false flag crucifixion and resurrection. Also paints him as the murderer of James the Just, the Apostle James, author of the book of James, by his own hand. So, why would the prayer of the Apostle Paul be in the Nag Hammadi scriptures? I think it's a pretty good question, and I think I have some pretty good ideas on it. But the prayer of the Apostle Paul starts out as such, and even though I hate to admit it, here's a magnifying glass because this writing is very, very small. So, the prayer of the Apostle Paul says, "Grant me your mercy, my Redeemer. Redeem me, for I am yours. I have come from you." So Paul, Saul of Tarsus, Apostle Paul, is praying, grant me your mercy. He's praying to his Redeemer. He's praying to the one that has redeemed him. He's praying to the one that he says he is, I am yours. He's showing that this being has ownership of him. And he's saying that he has come from him. Now, there's only one place that we can say that Paul is said to have come from. There's only one person that we could say is Paul's Redeemer. And to make it even more plain, Paul says in the next words, "You are my mind," or in other words, you've given me all of my doctrine. You have brought me forth. You are my treasury. You're the one that I get all my stuff from. Open for me. You're my fullness. You are what has brought me into being. You're my rest. You're my completion. Give me incomprehensible perfection. I call upon you. And it's so interesting, and we'll stop right there for a minute and talk about who Paul must have been addressing, and this is the reason why I think that Paul was included in the Nag Hammadi scriptures, at least the prayer of the Apostle Paul. And if we go to, we're going to go to something that I want to look at here. And what it is actually the text of my book. And the book is currently titled Final Message of the Last Apostle, with the subtitle Alien Agenda in the New Testament. It's on the shelf. I almost decided to grab it, but I figured, no, we'll do that maybe next time. I'm about to rebrand that, I think, Alien Agenda in the New Testament, Final Message of the Last Apostle. But at any rate, this is taken from the actual text of that book, and here's the reason why I brought it up, because we're talking about who is Paul praying to. And this is some very, very interesting stuff that, of course, you're not going to hear anywhere else. Luke wrote this in the book of Luke, and he's quoting Yeshua, and you can see right here, it says, "And he said to them, I saw Satan fall from heaven like lightning. Behold, I give you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you." And then in the book of Acts, you see down here, the book of Acts, chapter 9, verse number 3, also written by Luke. It's very important for you to understand. Luke writes there, as he neared Damascus on his journey, which was, of course, Saul of Tarsus, or the soon-to-be Apostle Paul, self-proclaimed, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground, and he heard a voice say to him, "Why do you persecute me?" And then, of course, Saul says, "Who are you, Lord?" And the entity responded to him, "I'm Jesus, whom you are persecuting." So, we have exactly two same passages written in two different places, actually from a single writer. And the events are exactly the same according to the language in the text used. Now, in that first passage, Yeshua is speaking, and he says this. He says, "I saw Satan," which really is the adversary. "I saw the adversary appear like a flash of brightness," word G796, "out of the heavens." Yeshua said, "I saw the adversary, the Satan, my adversary," because the direct article's there. "I saw my great adversary appear like a flash of lightning from the heavens." And then the man on the road to Damascus, which we know was Paul, says, "Suddenly a light flashed from heaven about him." It's written again by the same author, and guess what he used? The flash of brightness was the same G796. The flash of brightness that Yeshua saw and the flash of brightness that Paul saw on the road to Damascus are the exact same word. Both saw the exact same thing. And this really is incredibly important when you see how each one of these individuals, Yeshua and Saul, interpreted, I sound like George W. Bush, interpreted this flash. Yeshua identified the flash of brightness as a manifestation of the adversary, or his great adversary, the Satan or Satan. Who did Saul identify this flash being as? "I am Jesus whom you are persecuting." The Damascus road traveler, which was Paul, identified what Yeshua called the adversary or Satan as a manifestation of Jesus. Shouldn't say Yeshua, it says Jesus. It should say Jesus. That's a rather significant difference. But what is crystal clear is that they both saw the same spiritual entity, Yeshua and Saul, who would become Paul. One identified it correctly, one did not. That's obvious. The traveler saw what Yeshua termed an adversarial satanic entity and called it Jesus. This is because either the entity was in fact impersonating Jesus, which I think was true, or the whole story was invented, which is a possibility. And to make things even more interesting, we saw the very same entity present at the resurrection of Jesus, which was a great perpetration of a false flag event, crucifixion, resurrection, and crucifixion, death, and resurrection. So it's important for us to note that what Yeshua called Satan, or the adversary, Saul called his Lord. Lord, who are you, Lord? Well, we know who Saul's Lord is. And we know that Saul became Paul. And we know that it was Paul that wrote the prayer of Paul the Apostle. So when we read that Paul's saying, grant me your mercy, redeem me, Redeemer, I'm yours, I've come from you. You are my mind, you've given me my doctrine. You are my treasure, you've given me everything that I have. Accept me, you are my completion. Give me incomprehensible perfection. I call upon you. So that's about as far as we're going to get today, because I want to keep these bite-sized so you can wrap your heads around it. But the reason, in my view, the prayer of the Apostle Paul is included in the Nag Hammadi scriptures and in the revised and updated translation of sacred Gnostic text from Marvin Meyer. It's first because it shows the Apostle Paul pledging allegiance to the Archon, Yahweh, Lord, Yaldabaoth, Marduk. So it shows us from the very beginning that Paul was indeed a rat bastard, and that he is worshiping an entity and is the son of and has all his teaching from an entity that Yeshua said was his great adversary. Isn't this Nag Hammadi stuff fun? Well, I'm Jeffrey Dugherty, the Christian Whistleblower. We will continue with the Nag Hammadi scriptures, bringing them to you word by word, verse by verse. I don't know if they're actually verses, but word by word, all in an effort to help you and to help me too as you move forward and unindoctrinate yourself.